in one hadith it is mentioned that every prophet is buried where he dies. Hence, when the Prophet ﷺ passed away, there was a dispute amongst the Sahaba. You know, the Sahaba said, shall we bury the Prophet in Medina? Shall we bury him in Makkah? Shall we take him to Baitul Maqdis and bury him where other prophets are? You know what Abu Bakr radiallahu anhu said? He said, I've heard from Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam that a prophet is buried in the same very spot where he dies. A prophet is buried where? Same spot where he dies. Good thing for Mirza Qadiani, his followers didn't do that. Because if they would have buried him where he died, and I will just read to you how he died. He died in Lahore, and then his body was brought to Qadian. Qadian is India, almost 100 miles away. Almost 100 miles away. No prophet's body was transferred from the place where he died. Musa alayhi salam's qabr, he died in the desert, he was made in the desert. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam died in the Medina, not just in Medina, but in the hujra of Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. Hence his qabr was made there. And this is again Siratul Mahdi, volume 1, page 11. And his son has narrated this on behalf of his mother. So it's like Sahabi narrated from Aisha radiallahu ta'ala anha. So you can imagine how strong hadith this is according to Mirzai or Ahmadi traditions. It goes, खाकसार ने वालदा साहबा की ये रिवायत जो शुरू में दर्ज की गई है, जब दोबारा वालदा साहबा के पास बराए तस्दीक बयान की तो हजरत मसीह मऊद की वफात का जिक्र आया. तो वालदा साहबा ने फरमाया, he said, my mother said to me कि हजरत मसीह मऊद को पहला दस्त खाना खाने के वक्त आया था. First loose motion. You know what loose motion means? When you have diarrhea and you want to go to the toilet desperately quickly, the first loose motion came when he had dinner. Soon after eating his dinner, he went to the toilet. इसके थोड़ी देर बाद तक हम लोग आपके पांव दबाते रहे और आप आराम से लेटकर सो गए और मैं यहीं सो गई. He goes, then people sat around, they rested. Different people went to rest in their other places. And she says, the wife of Mirza Ghulam Ahmad Qadiani, she stayed with him and she was massaging him. और आप आराम से लेटकर सो गए और मैं भी यही सो गई. कुछ देर बाद आपको फिर हाजत महसूस हुई. Sometimes later he felt another motion coming. And और गालबन एक या दो दफा रफा हाजत के लिए आप पखाना तशरीफ ले गए. So he goes, couple of times he went to relieve himself to the toilet. So when you have diarrhea and you've been 2-3 times, you feel drained out, dehydrated, you feel weak. इसके बाद आपने ज्यादा ज़ौफ महसूस किया. He felt very weak. तो आपने हाथ से मुझे जगाया. Because she was sleeping near him. He had been backwards and forwards to the toilet number of times. So he woke her up because she was his wife. मैं उठी तो आपको इतना ज़ौफ था कि आप मेरी चारपाई पर ही लेट गए. They were sleeping in the same room on different beds. So he came to wake her up. But having woken her up, his bed and there is her bed, he could not go back from her bed to his own bed and he fell asleep on her bed. This is how weak he was feeling. और मैं आपके पांव दबाने के लिए बैठ गई. Then she started massaging him. थोड़ी देर के बाद हजरत साहब ने फरमाया तुम अब सो जाओ. मैंने कहा नहीं मैं दबाती हूँ. Then he said to her, you go to sleep, don't worry about me. She said, no, I want to massage you. इतने में आपको एक और दस्त आ गया. In the meantime, he had another call and he ran to the toilet. मगर अब इस कदर ज़ौफ था कि आप पखाना ना जा सकते थे. And then he felt so weak he couldn't go to the toilet. इसलिए मैंने चारपाई के पास ही इंतजाम कर दिया. In our Asian culture, when someone is very ill and he can't go to the toilet, you know what they do? They put a few bricks and they put something in front to put a sheet across it so that he can relieve himself behind the curtain. So what she did, where he was sleeping, right next to his bed, she put out things so that he can relieve himself next to the bed. इसलिए मैंने चारपाई के पास ही इंतजाम कर दिया और आप वहीं बैठकर फारग हो गए. And then there is Hazrat Sahab, he's sleeping there and mashallah with his flow next to his bed and all the fragrance coming from there. और फिर उठकर लेट गए. he relieved himself there and he came and slept next to his, what he had already done. And then she was also, mashallah, smelling the ether fragrance and she was massaging him. But he was feel, magar zof bahut zyada ho gaya tha. Iske baad ek aur dast aaya. And then he had another loose motion. Aur phir aapko qay aayi. Then he vomited as well. जब आप कैसे फारग होकर लेटने लगे तो इतना जोफ था कि आप लेटते लेटते पुश्त के बल चार पाए पर गिर गए. And then when he vomited, he felt so weak. He was trying to get up. But he was so weak. Instead of getting up, he fell backwards. और आपका सर चार पाए की लकड़ी से टकराया. And then his head got banged on the side railings of the bed. And then फिर हालत दिगरगूं हो गई. And then he lost his senses and he became unconscious. Is this how Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam passed away? Na'udhu billah min dhalik. And then he died there later on. And he says later on he died there. Then from there his body was brought to Qadian. Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam died in the lap of Aisha and his qabr was dug in the same very place. So if Mirza Qadiani had been a prophet of Allah, which he wasn't, then his qabr should have been dug right next to where he relieved himself. And so much, and then it would have been a pleasure for the Qadiani